Welcome to the City of Opa-locka virtual second commission budget hearing. Before we start, I wanted to take a moment to give a moment of silence for the decision that's been happening across this country. It is extremely traumatizing for a lot of us as people in this community to see many people murdered, brutalized, and hurt, and to see that this country, that I know as me as an elected official, has sworn an oath to uphold the laws, continuously let people be killed, murdered without justice in this country. And it is traumatizing for too many of our community, too many people. And I want to make sure that we take a moment to acknowledge that. Just be at peace for one moment. Thank you. Madam Clerk, roll call.
Commissioner Bass, Commissioner Burke.
Here.
Vice Mayor Davis,
Here.
Commissioner Kelly,
Present.
Mayor Pygott.
I'm here. Commissioner Kelly, could you lead us in invocation?
Our Father and our God, we thank you for all of your many blessings. We thank you, God, for life, health, and strength. Continue to watch over our city, watch over our nation, watch over God impacted so heavily by COVID-19. Continue to bless us, guide us, and keep us. It's in your name we do pray. Amen.
Amen. Vice Mayor, Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Attorney, the second reading of the ordinance, 5A.
Your Honor, I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, if I can read the script, please.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes.
I apologize. Could you start with the emergency protocols that govern this meeting?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Pursuant to Executive Order 20-69 issued by the Office of Governor Ron DeSantis on March the 20th, 2020, municipalities may conduct meetings of their governing boards without having a quorum of its members present physically or at any specific location and utilizing communications media technologies such as telephonic or video conferencing as provided by Section 120.54 5B2 Florida statutes. The members of the City Commission appearing remotely for this meeting are Commissioner Bass, Commissioner Burke, Commissioner Kelly, Vice Mayor Davis, and Mayor Pygott. An opportunity was given for the public to email the city clerk prior to this meeting, and other opportunities may be given in the discretion of the commission tonight and with the proper protocols. As of this time, the clerk, will you please announce if you've had any persons who have registered with you to speak?
Mr. Mayor, no, I don't have any at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll turn the meeting back over to you.
Thank you very much. Madam Attorney, first budget item.
An ordinance of the City Commission of the City of Opa-locka, Florida, adopting a final millage rate pursuant to Section 200.065 of the Florida statutes for fiscal year 2020 through 2021, commencing October 1st, 2020 through September 30th, 2021, setting forth public hearing dates, providing for adoption of representations, providing for repeal of prior ordinances in conflict, providing for severability, providing for an effective date. The first reading public hearing was held on September 8th. This is sponsored by the city manager.
All right, this is a public hearing item. The clerk announced that there's no public comments for any items on this agenda. With that said, do I have a motion?
Move it.
Moved by Commissioner Burke.
Second.
Second by Vice Mayor Davis. Floor is open for discussion. Or
Mr. Mayor, may I?
Mr. Manager, could you introduce this item?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have to read a script before passage of this item. The script is as follows. The taxing authority is the City of Opa-locka, Florida. The current year rollback rate is 9.6439 mills. The tentative millage rate to be considered at this meeting is 9.8000 mills. The millage rate is a 1.62% increase over the current year rollback rate. That's all I have. Does the budget administrator have a presentation?
I can show one page. It's just by way of background. If that's of interest, we can do it. It's not central to what's being discussed. It's primarily background. So it's up to the will of the commission.
For the benefit of our residents, please provide the background.
Yes, sir. Coming up. Okay. Is that on the screen at this point? Let me try this.
Let's swap it, Bob.
Yep, I've got it. Oh, okay, good. I think everybody's looking at what is the front page, which is just the title page. The only page that I was going to show is just a little bit of background on what 9.8000 mills means. It is the basis of providing revenue to two funds within the city. On the basis of that millage rate, the general fund will receive $10,223,756, which is 56% of the total general fund funding. Just very quickly, by way of background, that 56% is relatively high when compared to other cities. We've discussed this before, the fact that the city does not have all significant alternate sources of funding for the general fund is one of the reasons why the city at this time has a higher millage rate. As I said, the millage rate provides revenue to two funds, the second fund being the CRA. Based on this millage rate, the city will contribute $712,555 of what's known as tax increment financing revenue to the CRA, which turns out to be 70% of the CRA's current year funding, with the other 30% coming from the state. Sensitivity analysis, going back up to the revenue being provided to the general fund, 0.1000 mills results in $104,000 revenue. Taking that same analysis down to the CRA, that same 0.1000 mills is responsible for $2,270 to the CRA. That was really the only page that I had. And at this point, I'm available to answer any questions that the commission may have. And after that, it reverts back to the commission for your discussion and adoption.
Thank you, Mr. Addington. Mr. Manager, do you have anything else?
No, Mr. Mayor.
All right, the floor is open for discussion. Any discussion on this item? All right, with the passage of this ordinance, we are moving forward with the 9.8 mills. As the many residents that's been tracking these discussions, we understand the high millage rate, and we're working with our 5-year recovery plan, which we recently submitted to the state to try over the next few years to bring down our millage rate. However, due to many other decisions of the past, we have some debt, we have some infrastructure work, and quite a few things we need to do to make sure this city shines. So that's why we're continuing with this millage rate, and we're passing this ordinance at this moment. So with that said, Madam Clerk, roll call.
Commissioner Burke,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Davis,
Yes.
Commissioner Kelly,
Yes.
Commissioner Bass, Mayor Pygott.
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0.
Madam Attorney, next item.
An ordinance of the City Commission of the City of Opa-locka, Florida, approving and adopting the City of Opa-locka's general, proprietary, and special funds budget for the fiscal year 2020 through 2021, commencing October 1st, 2020 through September 30th, 2021, providing for the expenditure of funds established by the budget, authorizing the city manager to take certain actions, providing for appropriation of all budget expenditures, providing for fees consistent with appropriation and amendment, providing for adoption of representation, providing for conflict and repealer, providing for severability, providing for an effective date. First reading and public hearing was held on September 8th, 2020. This is sponsored by the city manager.
All right. As noted, city clerk said that we do not have any public comments for these items. So I want to move forward with, and just for the record's sake, please, we do have webinars at the moment. So the public has opportunity to join in on these Zoom calls by clicking the link so that you can make sure your voices are heard on our budget and all these items. With that, do I have a motion for this item?
Move it.
Moved by Commissioner Burke,
Second.
second by Vice Mayor Davis. Mr. Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I defer the floor to the Budget Administrator, Mr. Anathan. If you can give a short summary of what we went over during the first budget hearing and take any questions of the commission.
Yeah. Okay. I'm unable to share a screen at the moment. Somebody else has it tied up. There we go. Thank you. Okay. Hopefully everybody's looking at the screen right now that says discussion adoption. Hear no answer. I'll take that as a yes. Very briefly, just want to, it's been a long journey. The end's in sight. Just a reminder, we did have the initial hearing on the 8th of September. There is a state requirement. We advertised 2 to 5 days before this particular hearing. This was done on Sunday in the Miami Herald. We're here tonight on the 23rd for the final hearing. The last 2 items that we have to take care of before it's wrapped up for the year. Tomorrow, we've got to get a signed ordinance to the various indicated people here, the tax collector, property appraiser, and the state, indicating the approval of the millage ordinance, which was just done. And then we have 30 days where there's going to be a minor exchange of information between the city and the county. And then we get, within 30 days, we have to get to the state the final compliance package indicating the city is in full compliance with all the requirements under TRIM. Very brief agenda for tonight. It can take 1 or 2 forms. I've noted 3 items here. The first one is covered right on this page itself. Just a reminder that the state has reviewed the proposed FY21 budget and was satisfied with it, felt it did exactly what they wanted to see us do, and their comment was approved as presented. At this point, I can take the commission and various other participants in this meeting through the fund highlights that we've looked at over the last month or so, which is a statement which provides background on the numbers that were subsequently adopted for each fund, and then the reasons for doing it based on the highlights of it. Or if the will of the commission is not to go back through these charts again, then it really becomes the third item, which means I'm available for any questions that may come up, and then it reverts back to the commission for commission discussion and subsequent adoption. So I'm looking for guidance as to whether there is a desire to go back through the fund highlights that we've looked at in the past.
Mr. Anathan, if you can direct our users to where they need to go to access this information and give a very general overview of the budget. I know that we did have a first budget hearing where it's a very detailed discussion on these items. But for the benefit of those that are tuning in now and for the record, would like us to have at least a general overview of the budget.
Yes, sir, I can do that. In response to your first part of your comments, the budget book, the updated budget book is now online and available. Anybody who wants to go to the city website, they can find that information. It's there in detail. I'll try and go through very briefly the things that we've looked at over the last 45, 60 days. Just to remind everybody of the highlights of each of the primary funds and a quick page in each case of the numbers that underlie it. So with your permission, I'll proceed to the next page. And that would take us to the general fund. Again, the highlights on this is the city has enjoyed very strong tax base growth over the last several years. It's been one of the highest performing cities in the county. One of the keynotes of the FY21 budget that is under adoption right now is there has been and continues to be significant revenue uncertainty based on the uncertainty of the pandemic on revenue. That was true 3-4 months ago. It's equally true today. The city has made excellent progress on its fund balance restoration for general fund. Because of the pandemic, at the moment, we are not including that in the budget for next year. Has been some headcount growth as enumerated on the page here. Compensation for most employees remain unchanged. The exceptions to that will be those who are governed by the PBA contract, and also in response to the commission policy that at least every full-time employee is going to make at least $30,000. The latter item affected about a dozen people in this budget. Again, other things are a reorganized police leadership. By this time next year, you will have a finance department that's going to be fully caught up in all its requirements, will be 100% functional in its capabilities. Increased emphasis on parks and recreation, re-engineering of city business processes led by the IT department. Getting down to the bottom of this page, the assumption for the moment is that although we have on the books $2.7 million that could have been forwarded to the state for prior year red light cameras, the assumption is at the moment for this year that will not occur. And as also mentioned in prior times, normally the city for the general fund would have about a $1.1 million contingency. This plan embodies a $1.5 million contingency, which provides, and the addition is there first and foremost to deal with revenue uncertainty, but does provide commission leeway to do things that are not currently reflected in the budget. Is there, very quickly, the highlights of this budget, I'll just kind of point to a couple of them. The moment we're looking at for the current year at 2.6 million, 2.648292 to be specific, improvement. In other words, this is a surplus of revenues over expenditures. Should get the fund balance down to just shy of a negative 700,000. Based on things I've seen recently, I think it's going to be better than that, resulting in further improvement in that number. Key ingredients in the FY21 budget. The revenue funding is going to be down. You can see in the rightmost column, if I can draw your attention to it, it's going to be down to 1.6. That is in part due to the pandemic uncertainty. It's also partly due to funds that are going to be provided by the debt service fund, whereas this year the bank took certain actions which allowed another $2.6 million to come into the general fund for this year. That was a one-time deal, will not be reported next year. The key things to be noted for next year is that excluding the increase in compensation, which has to do with headcount increase that we talked about a moment ago, all the other categories, 191,000 for operating expense and so forth, are flat or below this year, which is the reason why we're able to maintain at least a no use of fund balance when we're looking at an increase in pandemic revenue. So unless there are any questions, I'll just move on quickly to the next major fund. I'm sorry. Coexistent with that is the general fund relationship to the Governmental Fund CIP. As has been discussed, we're talking about an investment of $1.36 million into CIP, Governmental Fund CIP. That's going to be spread over 3 projects. The $300,000 for resurfacing, Kyra Lane for $800,000, which is 20% of the total $4 million project, and then sidewalks $260,000. Moving on very quickly to the Water Sewer Fund, which is the second biggest fund. Revenue is going to be down versus FY20. This is not because of a deterioration of performance next year. The first half of this year, we saw some very high months of billing. The county, which has now taken over responsibility of that fund, has indicated there are a lot of adjustments in the first half. Again, that would be a one-time phenomenon. So the revenue will be down. Our utility rates, what we charge our customers within the city and to a certain extent outside the city, are unchanged. know that they're high, know over the long term that we would like to bring them down. Given the cost structure in place at the moment, we can't do that. We pay the city for drinking water. I'm sorry, we pay the counties for drinking water. We also pay the county for wastewater processing. They have indicated what their increases are going to be in the rates as indicated here. That in total between those two expenditures is about $4 million out of the $12 million of revenue for that fund. As has been discussed a couple times, we owe the county for previous services provided $5 million. The current year will reflect the second year of that. Next year, again, there'll be another $1.2 million. This is presenting a problem in terms of being able to address other problems. That notwithstanding, we'll look very quickly at $3.6 million of capital investment to improve infrastructure. And this fund also is started with a negative fund balance. It is improved this year. It's a work in progress. It has a lot to go. We'll look very quickly at the numbers. And again, we'll focus primarily on FY21. You can see that up at the top in the second to right column, primary sources of revenue in addition to what we get for services is 479,000 grants, 2,800,000 in loans. These are not new grants nor new loans. These have been previously arranged but not yet pulled down. They will be pulled down this year, and you can see they are the primary source of doing $3,550,000 of capital work. I mentioned a debt service problem before, $1,974,000. $1.2 million of that goes to the county, would be the third out of the 5 years of that payment stream. The other $707,000 goes to the state as part of the state revolving loan, which has funded these loans and grants up here and is a manageable debt payment. Moving on quickly to the capital. As mentioned previously, $3.4 million investment over two projects. One would be the $2.9 million to Cairo Lane, and there'll be another $500,000 of design certification work. If no questions on this, I'll move on yet again. This is the stormwater fund. This is the last of our utility funds, or enterprise funds, I should say. This fund is in extremely healthy condition. It should maintain a fund balance somewhere under $200,000. As you'll see momentarily, the fund balance going into this year, at the end of this year, FY20, is forecast to be around $2.2 million. That's the basis of the first bullet, which says 1.95 of that is to be used next year for infrastructure improvement, which you can see down here in total is going to be $2.5 million. Another important thing that's occurred here, this department this year only had one person assigned to it. It will now have 3 people assigned to it next year. This will allow a lot of the ongoing maintenance necessary to have a healthy drainage system be done on a regular basis. It's been a challenge under the current manning for this year. And again, one last item is a recommendation to move the stormwater fees from the water service bills billed by the county to the property tax bill. This will go a long way to ensuring that all properties are fairly charged and that each and every property owner is fairly charged their fair share of supporting, maintaining, and improving the stormwater system. Key things on FY21 here, again, focusing on FY21 in the last 2 columns. See a revenue increase. As I said, there are problems with the bill, with the stormwater fees being charged on the water bills. We know part of the problem, steps are being taken that will be improved by about $500,000 next year. The other key ingredient is, if I can bring your attention down to the capital line, essentially $2.5 million in capital expenditure, the most that's been done in a long time for the city. That's being funded, if I can bring your attention down to the use of fund balance, $1.95 million of fund balance, which is what you can see down in the fund balance analysis down here. Even with the use of that, you still have $270,000 remaining, although the requirement is somewhat less than $200,000. So this fund continues to be healthy. The investment mentioned a moment ago, $2.7 million investment spread over 6 projects. We've discussed them, so I won't go back through unless anybody has any questions. For the CRA, key things here is going into next year, the downtown master plan will be completed. On an initial basis, they've been looking at projects for CR plan update, the continuation of the facade plan enhancement program, streetscapes, and also a investment in the parks. Again, at the outset, we talked about the implications of the millage rate. I had mentioned at that time that the city, because that millage rate would be contributing $712,000, which you can see here, which when added to the county contribution, which is about 30% of the total, gets you about $1.4 million. The various programs that I outlined a moment ago occur here in the operating expenses, $729,000. On the statement for the CRA, there's an item called the trust fund. This really is also contingency. If not used, this will in fact add to the opening balance and will be result in a fund balance at the end of FY21 of a little over $1 million. This fund does not have any requirement to maintain a fund balance. So it means the entire 1.0 million is available for investment going forward. The town center highlights. Key thing here really is twofold. One, next year, very important that we have to get the building broken into condominium units. For the first time ever, the city has incurred a tax bill for the coming year of $160,000. This was a result of having a for-profit tenant in one of the units. It took care of the entire tax exemption, or I should say it eliminated the entire tax exemption for the building. By putting it into condominium units, which we have to get in place by the end of the current calendar year, i.e. December 31st, would mean that only those properties that are or those units that are occupied by for-profit units or for-profit tenants would be liable to tax. So very important, it's got to be done between now and December 31st. And the other important thing about the budget for next year for this fund is that it still requires significant general fund support. And you can see it right here, even with the rental revenue that the building is anticipated to realize next year, which does not recognize its full potential, still requires $431,575 support from the general fund, which if it did have to be used here, obviously can be used elsewhere. The other salient point on this, I'll just point out very quickly, you can see the operating expenses higher. Really the true operating expense is lower, but when you add in the $160,000 property tax, it ends up in being an increase in operating expense. Information services, this really is an internal service fund. As you know, all the funds, all of its charges are allocated back out to all the other divisions, and consequently, it's a wash transaction. This is the division that is going to lead the way in upgrading the city's business processes. And you can see it in the operating expense where there's a significant investment in both software and hardware. Moving very quickly, the risk management is equally so an internal service fund, which means all of its expenses are charged out to the other divisions. Consequently, by definition, it's always break even. This embodies all of the various insurance coverage that the city has, and really there's not too much more to be added on this one. So that is a very brief, hopefully brief review of everything that's been looked at over the last last 45 days. It was the basis of the plan that was subsequently adopted, and they tried to identify the key things that led to the adoption of those particular funds. So at this point, I stand ready to advance to address any questions that anybody may have. And other than that, the discussion reverts back to the commission for your discussion and adoption.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Mr. Manager, do you have anything else on this item? Muted, sir.
No further comments on the item, Mr. Mayor.
All right, the floor is open for discussion.
Mayor,
Commissioner Kelly.
thank you. The state has already signed off, so I just want to ask a couple of questions. Really, I had mentioned earlier about, and when we're talking about employee raises going forward, and have been mentioned by the manager, that was something he was looking into. I was trying to get a clarity after the budget is passed, was the intent to look at that after the first quarter, first half of the year, or some kind of salary increase or cost of living adjustment for all the employees. I know we did something for those that brought them up to a certain level, but for all the employees. And secondly, the breakdown of the police reorganization. If we could get that, if I could just get just that portion of 205,000, I know it's embedded somewhere in the whole document, but just for that part, what it really looks like for that reorganization. And the water processing and the water purchase that we had increases on, how do we absorb those costs? We didn't pass them on to the residents, so we use reserves, or we calculated, or did we know that they were going to increase? So we already captured that in our analysis. We first did the budget. Those are my three questions, along with in the letter from the governor's office back to the manager saying that they reviewed and approved the budget. They also indicated that the city can make changes to its reserves as discussed. If I can get, or we can get what that as discussed entails, I'd like to know what that is. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and to the manager and the staff for the budget. Thank you.
Manager, you have the floor.
Thank you, Commissioner Kelly. As far as the cost of living increase, we'll be evaluating our revenues during the first quarter of this upcoming budget year to see how our revenues are looking. And based on that, potentially in the first or second of budget amendment, we may look at a cost of living increase, but that's based on our revenues. We really have not seen the full impact of COVID-19 and how it's impacted our budget as of yet moving forward. So I want to kind of evaluate those things before dedicating that. So that'll be something that'll be done and looked at in the first quarter of the budget that is that was just approved. As far as the police reorganization, I believe a document went out. I do not have a problem having a conversation with you in regards to that, as far as breaking that down to eaches, so you can have a specific breakdown. But I know I did task a document to go out last week to the entire commission to answer those questions. As far as water, sewer goes, as far as the increase, at this point, the city is absorbing the increase, not the residents, and is being absorbed through reserves. We're in the process of brainstorming if we're going to do, or when we're going to do, a study in regards to our water rates. As the budget administrator stated at the first budget hearing, there's always been angst in regards to increasing water rates as far as our residents in the city of Opa-locka. So we always want to be very cautious in dealing with that subject. So at this time, the city is absorbing those dollar amounts, either through reserves or additional revenues that are coming in. I think that's three. Did I miss the question? Commissioner, I want to make sure I answered all your questions.
No, you answered. I didn't get the, Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor.
You go ahead, Commissioner.
You said you sent the document out. Maybe I overlooked it in my email because I didn't see it. So I'll ask the clerk or Mr. Grice to pull it up because I didn't get that. But you answered the other ones. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Any other discussion on this item? All right, hearing none. Mr. Manager, just for the sake of all of our residents, there's some major concerns that our residents have. We know that with this budget basically is the game plan for the next year for the addressing of many of the issues, challenges, and to move this city forward. I mean, we have 4 major challenges that we're working with the city in terms of our finances, getting out of this financial recovery and addressing our debt, our water billing, and addressing our water bills, our flooding and its during moratorium, And then fourth, our roads, streets, and capital improvement projects. Could you detail specifically how this budget will affect our debt and how much we're allocating to reducing our debt? Two, what we're doing to address flooding, the roads, streets, what capital improvement projects will be moved forward, and how are we going to address our water infrastructure?
So first, Mr. Mayor, thank you for all your questions. Very greatly appreciated. The staff is actually prepared to provide a full briefing on all those items at the main commission meeting at 7 o'clock. I can have staff that are available now defer and provide those presentations now if you like, or we can defer to 7 o'clock during the manager's briefing, and we're going to go over all the challenges as well as a breakdown of the budget, going over debts, and actually all the questions you just asked just now. It's your preference if you want to do it now or if you want to do it at 7 o'clock.
I was looking for just very quick statements, but if you're saying that our residents can tune in or watch the video of our next meeting to get answers to that question, then those questions that will satisfy. I just want to make sure that they are very clear about how we are allocating taxpayers' dollars to address our debts, get out of this financial crisis that we're in, and handle many of the basics that we need to do to make sure this city continues to shine. So if that is the case, then I'm fine if you don't have quick answers to those questions.
Well, just to provide just a quick summary to just a generalized answer to the questions that you asked, the city very thoroughly and very deliberately this year paid very much close attention to the budget as far as the budget development process and how it coincides with the development of the 5-year plan. And that's we're dealing with our capital projects, our infrastructure related issues, our 4 major challenges, including our flooding issues, our water infrastructure issues, and various other issues that we discuss, of course, on a bi-monthly basis during our meetings. The public, if tune in, have seen several actions that this administration has taken over the past year, and more specifically over the last 90 days in addressing our flooding issues as far as getting our city evaluated as far as our flooding emergency. As you all are aware, the city declared a flooding emergency over a year ago. We actually made significant steps. Now we're getting this flooding emergency actually evaluated through an independent engineer. We're coming up with a plan to take care of and deal with major arteries and major issues within the city. We're looking at compliance related issues internally within the city as far as our code enforcement department and how they respond to code related violations as it relates to our 4 major challenges, our flooding and water issues, and making sure that we're holding our third party property owners accountable in regards to our flooding and our other infrastructure issues that are not under the control of the city, but under control of private property management. We've made great strides in catching our audits up. We're down 1 audit at this time in being in compliance and being up to date in our audits. Our 5-year plan is up at Tallahassee right now under review. And I'm getting very positive feedback that hopefully that 5-year plan will be hopefully approved sometime in the month of October and return back to the commission for final review and the final red stamp, which is a long time coming. So this year, 2020 has been a very significant year for the city of Opa-locka in dealing with our debt, dealing with debt restructuring, evaluating our departments and how they service our residents. On top of that, dealing with a financial emergency. On top of that, dealing with a medical pandemic of the coronavirus, as well as various other issues that a typical city typically do not run into on a daily basis. So I'm very proud of this budget. I'm very proud of my staff. I want to give my highest regard and respect to our budget administrator, Mr. Robert Anathan, for the effort and work he's done with our staff and getting this budget together in the 5-year plan. And I look forward to moving the city forward another year. And I look forward to further engagement with our residents and actually going over our budget Once it's adopted, which you guys just, actually, you guys have not voted on it yet, so it has not been adopted. So upon adoption, I look forward to holding workshops and explaining what the budget is. Like, we go through the budget process, but we never really, after the budget's passed, track our dollars and really show the residents how it's applied to the day-to-day operations of the city and how their money is being used moving forward. So I plan to set up workshops to do that, as well as various other programs to educate our residents in making progress as we move the city forward. Thank you.
There's no other discussion on the budget. Madam Clerk, roll call.
Vice Mayor Davis,
Yes.
Commissioner Kelly,
Yes.
Commissioner Baggs,
Yes.
Commissioner Burke,
Yes.
Mayor Pygott.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
All right, we have completed our budget hearing. We have approved a budget that will be our game plan for the next year and tackling our 4 major challenges and ensuring that we get sidewalks across the city, miles of street repaved, our infrastructure analyzed so that we can have put together a comprehensive plan, capital improvement projects plan to address flooding throughout the city of Opa-locka, and also to reorganize our police safety and invest in our parks and recreation. So with that said, this meeting is at conclusion. Look forward to our next meeting for further information and continue to watch the city of Opa-locka. With that, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Move it.
Moved by Commissioner Burke,
Second.
second by Commissioner Bass. Have a good evening. Look forward to seeing you at 7 o'clock. Take care.